unexplained suicides, families and children being threatened, and federal officers being used as pawns. This is just a glimpse of what Epstein was doing to silence his victims. Katt Williams is now exposing everything that went on behind the scenes. How is it that despite 3 million files being released, not a single arrest has been made, and even though Epstein was reported almost a decade ago, no investigation ever took place? It was 1996, and she was the very first victim to officially report Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to the authorities. But in a pattern that would be set in the decades ahead, her complaint was ignored. They just kept it all quiet, put it in the bottom drawer, and they're so dismissive that I just felt daunted and I stopped. But by going to police, Maria felt the full force of Maxwell's fury. Terrified, Maria went into hiding and gave up her art career. What sort of threats has she made against you? Originally, it started with things like, "I'm going to burn your art," and then "I'm going to burn your career," and then "I'm going to burn you and the house you live in." And then it was, "Oh, be careful crossing a street. You can get shot in the back of the head." They were threats against my life, and I told the FBI this. Hundreds of victims are mentioned in the Epstein files, yet no arrest has ever been made. Victims were forced to remain silent about the elites who were present with Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell was the one controlling everything from behind the scenes. Emails, flight logs, and bank statements present in the Epstein files show that Ghislaine was the mastermind recruiting more victims and being in charge of keeping them silent. Victims were followed, their families were threatened, and if Ghislaine felt that they were going to speak out, these same victims would end up dying unexplained deaths. Shockingly, this continued even after Maxwell's arrest. On June 28, 2022, Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for conspiring with Jeffrey Epstein to engage in inappropriate conduct involving Meg, along with a $750,000 fine. After abusing these little girls, they would then stalk them for the rest of their life and continue to verbally assault over the phone and just in person and anywhere that they could find them. They would follow these girls around for the rest of their life. Epstein's people continued to find her and would have tabs on her, calling her numbers to threaten her and continue to harass her for the rest of her life. She said that since the threats began, there have been 4 to 5 close calls where she was almost run off the road. Multiple cars, not just one, multiple. There are reports of bodies being buried at multiple sites across Epstein's Little St. James Island and his Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. Allegedly, these bodies belong to the victims that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were trying to get rid of. Investigators are actually now searching Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch for the bodies of 2 girls who were alleged to death, according to the Daily Mail. The search comes after an email claimed that a former staffer had information that 2 girls were buried outside the ranch. There are still many unanswered questions surrounding what went on at Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch property in New Mexico, and a group of lawmakers tasked with finding those answers say they're building the team to do it. News 13's Jessica Barron is live in the Newsplex with that story. The Truth Commission was established during this year's legislative session to investigate Epstein's activities and ties in New Mexico. Democratic Representative Andrea Romero is one of the members of the commission and says she's confident about what they'll accomplish. The Truth Commission is set up to bring justice to survivors, to get an official government record around what happened at the ranch, a sprawling property in Santa Fe County now infamous over allegations. It may have been a hotbed of trafficking, and the mystery surrounding what went on at Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch and who was involved has left the country demanding answers. That's why New Mexico lawmakers created the Truth Commission during this legislative session. Now, that group says they're currently building a team of legal experts to conduct their investigations. Representative Andrea Romero is one of the members of the Truth Commission. She says they've opened a request for proposals to hire legal experts who will comb through thousands of. I'm heartened by the idea that having a full slate of folks working with us through this investigation, we're going to have things to report by the end of the year. The question is, if we need more time, going into the next session, can that be granted if needed? Probably the best example of a victim being silenced is Virginia Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre was one of the first women to sue Epstein and actually submit physical evidence, including photos connecting Epstein to elites like Prince Andrew from the British royal family. Virginia Giuffre is the sole reason that Prince Andrew ever got arrested. In 2019, a few weeks before the official release of the Epstein files, Virginia announced that she was writing a book about everyone she saw during her time on Epstein's island and on his private plane, the Lolita Express. Soon after, Virginia revealed on social media that she was receiving threats from unknown sources that warned her of what would happen if she kept speaking out. Virginia refused to be silenced, but before she could release the book, she was randomly hit by a truck. Although she survived this, she allegedly committed days later. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Shortly before her death, Virginia had actually tweeted about being silenced. The tweet reads, "I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me for the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted." Welcome back and alive now. I'm Austin Westfall. Breaking news coming in, some sad news to share. We're learning this from the New York Post, several other outlets reporting this as well. Virginia Giuffre, the most prominent victim of the late convicted vile Jeffrey Epstein, took her own life on Thursday. This is just weeks after she made headlines for saying that she had days to live after she claimed to have been hit by a bus. A statement given to NBC News was quoted as such from the 41-year-old's family. It says, "It's with utterly broken hearts that we announce that Virginia passed away last night at her farm in Western Australia. She lost her life to suicide after being a lifelong victim of sexual abuse and sex trafficking." The New York Post says that Giuffre took legal action against billionaire financier Epstein in 2015, alleging that she was sex at age 16 after his ex-lover and convicted Madam Ghislaine Maxwell recruited her from her job as a locker room attendant at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. The mom of three, according to the Post, also alleged that she was forced to have sex with disgraced Prince Andrew 3 times when she was 17, including at Epstein's Little St. James Island in New Mexico and in Maxwell's London home, where a notorious photo of her with King Charles's eldest brother was taken. The Post says the allegations became the biggest scandal to rock the royal family in a generation. Again, hearing of the sad news just within the past hour, Virginia Giuffre, the most prominent victim of late convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, taking her own life on Thursday. It was announced on Friday, her death. She was 41 years old, her family confirming this. Then she comes out publicly and says, "It was intended to be a private message. My excuse. Thank you. No, just on that. On that I have 5 days to live." And then a month later, how about 3 weeks later? She's dead by suicide? Nothing about this story makes any sense whatsoever, any more than I'm expected to believe that Epstein killed himself. She also previously had tweeted, "If ever I'm not suicidal." Although I think whenever someone takes to social media to say that, ironically, there's something going on. She posted a while back, we were on the cusp of Epstein documents being released, seen clients on that list. Virginia Giuffre is the most credible of the last of the living witnesses, the last public of the witnesses. And instead of the release of the documents, we have the death of the most prominent living testament to the horrors of the Epstein-Ghislaine. Prince Andrew allegedly human trafficking ring. So none of it makes any sense. I don't believe that she took her own life. People are going to say whether or not she's even dead. If she wants to disappear from the face of the earth, this is how you do it, because maybe she just wants to not deal with this anymore. But I won't believe ever that she deliberately took her life. Vinny. This is where the story takes an even darker turn. Allegedly, Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't the only one working to discredit and silence victims. We know for a fact that Epstein was working with several individuals from inside emails from the Epstein files, along with court documents from the prosecutors in Maxwell's case, show that Maxwell allegedly cut deals with 25 different celebrities to keep them quiet. Allegedly, an investigative journalist might just have found one of these celebrities. According to a newly filed court document, Ghislaine Maxwell, the former associate of Jeffrey Epstein, she was convicted of trafficking minors, sentenced to 20 years in prison. She claims that 25 men, maybe friends, associates of the deceased financier, have been protected under secret settlement, secret deals, and that this information was not revealed to her during her trial. This is on top of what she claims are 4 other individuals, alleged co-conspirators who were never charged. Obviously, I have thoughts. Is she telling the truth, particularly given her past, in light of what she's trying to do now? If this is true, number 1, wow, and who are these people? What is a secret settlement? Can we ever find out? Can the public ever find out? First of all, let's look at some names that Katt Williams himself told us. The first of them is Chris Tucker. During the recent release by the Department of Justice, photos of Chris Tucker and President Bill Clinton on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane came out. Allegedly, Chris Tucker went to Africa on what was called a humanitarian mission with Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, and Kevin Spacey by flying on Epstein's jet on September 2, 2002. Epstein was accused of recruiting a sex slave on this trip, and allegedly, it was this victim who gave the authorities Chris Tucker's name. The Chris Tucker that we got now is Epstein Island Chris Tucker, not Smokey. Oh Lord, have mercy. Whew. If I didn't know nobody, I'd tell you he's the greatest. I don't care what you say. To be confident and not delusional is a real skill. Most of these confident people we see is really delusional. Another name is Harvey Weinstein. Allegedly, Harvey Weinstein was working for Epstein and helping him recruit more victims. Katt has actually referenced Harvey Weinstein multiple times and hinted that Weinstein wasn't at the top of the ladder and instead was reporting to someone else. He recently revealed that this person might actually be Epstein. It's a supplier. Epstein, Weinstein, like these guys, knew what these extremists liked and provided it. And provided the way for you to have to have $1 billion and not create a fantasy island type environment has not existed throughout history, right? Yeah, I mean, if I was going to run some global power organization, I would try to co-opt every single leader, try to suck them in, offer support, bring them out to wherever I have my big-ass meetings, fly everybody in private jets, talk about the climate crisis. All organizations have to follow the same rules. Yeah, that's wild. Recruitment is an important facet of all, like we have to get some young global leaders. Well, understand this is the only reason that we can talk about these big Illuminati-like entities at this period of time is just because of time. Like they aged out, like you can't, right? Get in new. So everybody got decrepit over there, and they can't exchange, really. We can actually see how victims were being forced to stay silent within Hollywood. When Katt Williams started saying no to the elites controlling the industry, he was blackballed, threatened, and when he still refused to stay silent, these elites even tried coming after his children. No, this is their 9th time coming to my house. The problem was this time they came to my office and took my kids from my office. Not from my house, from an office. So now, when I can't have my kids at my office, listen to this. I must be. Yeah, definitely. The most terrible black dude. Because here's the whole thing. You're going to charge me with child endangerment after I adopted 7 children and had them for 14 years in this state? Really? You're coming after my kids now? 'Cause it was already a witch hunt. Now you want my babies? Yeah, I get it. Now, most people would have walked away, but not Katt. Katt has been speaking out against what happens inside Hollywood for years. He was actually the first one to reveal that actors might actually be, if they don't obey the elites. When the industry realizes it can't control you, it cuts you off. Katt revealed that performers with contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars are key, so the production company can walk out of the contract and not have to pay them. Every time someone ends up dying out of the blue, it's a sign of them being silenced, in order for the type of ratings we need and attention to be on this thing. See, what I'm saying is in business, nothing is coincidental, or you would be hearing who's losing money. In all of these situations, it's only the artist that's losing. Somebody makes big money. When these rappers get killed, not incidental. Somebody made $100 million and now don't have to talk to that artist or none of they crew, don't have to validate none of they contracts. Now only got to deal with the mama, only got to see her once a year and it's over, and the money goes up and up and up. So they killed this $20 million guy, but they reached $60 million in benefits. Wow. Had some people from your city do it. Wow. I'm saying there's the good side and the bad side of these businesses. And but think about what you just think about what you just said. That's extremely thoughtful and powerful. Some investigative journalists actually believe that Ellen was involved in silencing victims within Hollywood. Let's not forget that she was allegedly mentioned over 300 times in the Epstein files. That the Epstein files reveal Ellen DeGeneres as, and I'm quoting this directly from the Post's, Hollywood's most prolific cat. That she consumed human flesh. People are sharing distorted images of her face, writing paragraphs about underground dystopias, calling her a vampire. Now, these are completely unfounded claims with no evidence to back them up. So let's take a look at what's actually in the files. Ellen DeGeneres is named in the Epstein documents, and that part is real. Her name appears in the broader index of over 300 high-profile individuals that show up across the investigative materials, flight logs, communications, third-party interviews, peripheral records. As for what she did, some reports point towards the mysterious deaths and the timing of her show being canceled. In 2022, just 1 month after Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced to prison, Ellen shut down her show. By the end of the same year, Stephen Twichboss, Ellen's co-producer and alleged best friend of 8 years, and Anne Heche, her ex-girlfriend, had both died under extremely mysterious circumstances. Stephen Twichboss even left a note before his death, where he allegedly mentioned his time on The Ellen Show being a huge source of burden that was forcing him to take this extreme step. We're learning more tonight about the tragic side of Stephen Twichboss and the detailed steps he took to hide his plans. TMZ is reporting with Twitch left his home the day before he took an Uber to a motel about a mile away. At the motel, he switched his phone to airplane mode so no one could reach him. The motel manager says he checked in rather under his own name and never left his room. We also now know that Twitch left his note. Details have not been made public, but TMZ reports the note alluded to challenges Twitch had faced in the past. Entertainer Tyler Perry knows firsthand what that is like. I'm going to take you back to a time in my life where I tried to commit suicide a couple of times. Because it was so dark, and I thought the only way to make this better or this pain go away is to end my life. Had any of those attempts happened, I would have missed the best part of my life. The worst part of the story is that allegedly these threats and control are still going on. Ghislaine Maxwell is having the time of her life and lives an extremely comfortable life behind bars. She actually had a visit from the Deputy Attorney General and the current acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche. Right after that meeting, she was suddenly moved to a minimum security prison camp in Bryan, Texas. This place is way different compared to a standard prison. It's got dormitory-style housing, barely any fencing, and a much lower staff-to-inmate ratio than where she was before. Couple more, and we're almost out of time. I do want to ask you about Ghislaine Maxwell, who was of course convicted in 2021 for her role in helping Jeffrey Epstein traffic his victims. In July, you interviewed her in Florida, where she was serving a 20-year sentence in federal prison. Just a week later, Maxwell was moved to a more permissive prison camp in Texas. Why was she moved just days after you interviewed her, Mr. Blanche? So, that's a Bureau of Prisons security issue that I will not talk about. Have anything to do with it? Did you have anything to do with it? Let me finish. First of all, I am responsible for the Bureau of Prisons. So every decision that they make lands on my desk to the extent it needs to. But just let me talk about the security issue. At the time that I met Ms. Maxwell, there was a tremendous amount of scrutiny and publicity towards her and the institution she was in. She was suffering numerous threats against her life. So, the BOP is not only responsible for putting people in jail and making sure they stay in jail, but also for their safety. And so she was moved. She was in federal prison. She was in federal prison before. She's in federal prison now. She's doing 20 years because she was convicted. And the fact that she was moved, she might be moved to another institution tomorrow if security requires it. And that's true of any federal inmate across this country. There's a suspicious pattern of federal authorities actually not helping the victims. First, Maria Farmer's report was ignored. And now FBI files prove Epstein's top recruiter, Jean-Luc Brunel, offered to flip and expose the entire ring for immunity. The DOJ completely ignored him to protect the elites until he was found dead in prison. And this is an FBI file that says one of Epstein's, it says what appears to say BFs, best friends perhaps. Jean-Luc Brunel has, quote, helped get girls. He is wanting to cooperate. And it goes on to discuss a plan for that and that he's hired a lawyer and how that would work. And so these are notes that date all the way back to a period where Brunel was believed to have considered cooperating. If you haven't heard of him, if you haven't followed this case as closely, he's one of the key officials because he held himself out as a kind of modeling scout. He did, and that's debated over whether he was actually a legit broker, but that was one of the tools they would use. He went into businesses that had arrangements with Epstein. He was on the flights a lot, so his name was one of those that had been around before. We're also being kept from the truth. To give you an idea of just how much information is being kept from us, there are emails released by the DOJ where Epstein is clearly talking about victims to other elites. However, none of the files name these individuals. In fact, hundreds of thousands of files are completely redacted. So the people responsible won't be outed. Question: which one do you prefer? Lewd and lascivious conduct or procuring mitchin? I suppose lewd and lascivious conduct. I would prefer lewd and lascivious conduct with A if possible. That exchange between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell on May 23, 2008 is part of some 18,000 emails from Epstein's personal Yahoo account obtained by Bloomberg News. The emails, which suggest the inbox was most active between 2005 and 2008, include messages spanning 2002 to 2022. Epstein died in 2019, and emails received after that are largely spam or marketing offers. Overall, the emails offer a raw look into the disgraced financier's world. While this inbox wasn't the only one he used, the newly uncovered emails do suggest how central Maxwell was to his life, something that contradicts her telling of events. She's characterized herself as a former girlfriend and property manager for Epstein, not someone with eyes into his vast influence machine or sex operation. She's currently serving a 20-year sentence for conspiring with Epstein to see heirs, was central to curating Epstein's inner circle, according to these emails. In some emails, she's organizing visits with the likes of Sergey Brin and his then-girlfriend Anne Wojcicki. There are reports that Epstein himself was nothing more than a pawn or a cog in a bigger engine. Recently, one of Ghislaine Maxwell's old interviews went viral. In this interview, Ghislaine confirmed exactly what everyone has been saying all along. Epstein was silenced so the elites connected to him won't get exposed. So far, more than 400 powerful individuals from all over the world have been exposed for their connection to Epstein's ring. Imagine how many more would have been exposed if Epstein hadn't been and allowed to speak out. 3 million redacted files held this information, and that's not even half of what was recovered. Fox News alert: the Department of Justice just dropped last month's jailhouse interview with Epstein Madam Ghislaine Maxwell. And it's a doozy. First, she doesn't think Epstein himself. So you think he did not die by given all the things we just talked about? I do not believe he died by, and do you believe that, do you have any speculation or view of who killed him? No, I don't. And what about Epstein's infamous client list? Did he even have a list? You never observed or you never saw any sort of list or black book or a list of individuals who linked to certain masseuses or anything like that? No, there is no list. There is no, I'm not aware of any blackmail. I never heard that. I never saw it, and I never imagined it. The list doesn't exist. So flight manifests don't exist. The surveillance tapes don't exist. The bank records don't exist. Well, what about Trump? The media spent the last couple months trying to smear him as Epstein's predator pal. I don't recall ever seeing him in his house, for instance. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects. And did you ever hear Mr. Epstein or anybody say that President Trump had done anything inappropriate with masseuses or with anybody in your world? Absolutely never. In any context. A good portion of the interview focused on Bill Clinton. Author Daniel Halper told Primetime, Clinton was romantically involved with Maxwell. Investigation into Epstein's death due to being sealed as part of the cellmate's own criminal case. It was not mentioned in the official investigations into Epstein's death. The Justice Department tells the New York Times the agency has not seen the naughty being hidden in the Epstein files.